first pick.
Alrighty, welcome to another episode on the clock. Hi, I'm Jared Perkins. That's Tyler Jennings, as always. We have an awesome guest with us today, Terry Rooney, pitching coach and recruiting coordinator at South Carolina. Coach, how are you doing today?
Guys, I'm doing great. Really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you on. I know we've been following your journey through college baseball and just really excited to chat with you. First question we always ask guys, just share your journey through the coaching ranks, how you've kind of gotten to where you are today.
Well, first of all, I can tell you I've been very fortunate, throughout my career. And, I've been very fortunate to work at a lot of great institutions and more importantly, with a lot of great people. And this is what it's all about. So I've been at a lot of stops, that is for sure. But my journey has been very fortunate. As a matter of fact, my first year when I got done playing and coaching was actually 1997. So here I am, over 25 years in Division I baseball. So been very fortunate and going through just kind of very quickly. But actually, my first job I ever had was at George Washington University. I grew up in Northern Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C. And the head coach was Tom Walter, who's now the head coach at Wake Forest. Yeah. And it was Tommy's actually very first head coaching job. So I think he was 27, 28. I was about 23, just got done playing. Our other assistant was Joe Rakuya, who went on, to be an assistant at Alabama, head coach at Radford, and is now, the Kansas City Royals. So pretty good staff. It was pretty fun, early on. But from there, I spent some time early from George Washington, then the James Madison University. Went from there to Old Dominion University, so stayed in Virginia my first few stops. Then went to Stetson University in Florida, and then from there, Notre Dame, and then LSU. Then was the head coach at UCF in Central Florida for 8 years. Alabama, Houston, Purdue, LSU, and now here at South Carolina. So unbelievable journey. But you know what I take from that are just a couple of things. And, first and foremost, number one, obviously how very fortunate I am to have been doing this. But to work alongside the people is just incredible. I have been so fortunate to work for a group of coaches that have mentored me in so many ways. Certainly starts with Paul Mainieri. This is our first year together here at South Carolina, but actually my third time with him. I was with him at Notre Dame for a few years, went from Notre Dame with him to LSU when Coach took the LSU job, and now back here with him for the third time at South Carolina. So obviously I'm proud to call him my mentor, my friend, and the chance to come back and work with him for the third time has been fantastic. But even along the way, I've worked with so many great coaches. We talked about Tom Walter, he first started out, and, Tony Guzzo. You're talking about Hall of Fame coaches. Tony Guzzo, who just passed away recently, an incredible man, incredible coach. Pete Dunn, Hall of Famer, 1,000 wins, with him. And then obviously, Coach Mainieri, and then most recently, Jay Johnson, at LSU. So I can tell you, sit back and look at it, very, very fortunate to be with these guys. And then, just work along, obviously, a tremendous amount of fellow assistant coaches throughout the journey. So I've been blessed in many ways.
I love that. And I love hearing you from the Virginia. I'm from the DMV area as well. And so have a soft spot for George Washington, Georgetown, and all those schools. Talk a lot about what it was like to start at those smaller schools, right? The recruiting process, kind of what goes in trying to build a program at the mid-major level.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And certainly recruiting has changed, as everybody will tell you throughout the years. However, I will tell you this, there's a lot of things that I tell people often that have not changed. And that's the relationship piece, And I think in recruiting, I will tell you this, just myself personally in my journey, I've enjoyed recruiting as much as any aspect of my job. And that's been a big part of it for me, having the chance to do the pitching and even being a head coach for 8 years at UCF. But just to the recruiting piece, I think is so important of it. And, I think when you go for different schools, I think the one thing you have to really look at is what each school, brings to the table from a positive standpoint. And I believe every situation is positive. And I think you have to look at, what are the greatest values each institution has and then recruit the respective student athletes accordingly. But, for myself personally, just to move up along the ways, I think it's about the relationships. I think it's about, looking at recruiting. I've said this often, particularly in the SEC, you have to look at recruiting as Friday night in the SEC. You know what I mean? You have to, I think too, there's so many variables from a recruiting standpoint, but to be a successful recruiter, you have to look at that competition the same as game day, in every single day doing in every single Dave, embracing that challenge from a recruiting standpoint. And then in coaching, I think it's quite simple. I often go back to when Coach Mainieri first interviewed me before he hired me at Notre Dame, and he asked me one important question. He said, "Why'd you get into coaching?" And I said, "Coach, to be honest, I got into coaching to impact the lives of young kids." I said, "I was very fortunate to play for a gentleman by the name of Scott Gines at Radford University. And Coach Gines did something for me that I'll be forever in debt. And he made me almost believe that I was better than I was because I wasn't very good, you know? But he really did. He instilled a level of confidence at a young age that if you work hard and you have a great work ethic, you can do anything. And I took that, as a, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kid and really believed in that. And I thought when I got done playing, man, I hope I can do that. I hope I can make kids believe how good they can be and instill that confidence. And so that's always been, just from an overall coaching philosophy standpoint, that's kind of always been the hallmark and the foundation for me, is getting kids to, of course, develop and win, but just believe that they can become anything they want and be, the best player possible from that aspect of it.
No, I love that mentality and that mindset too, because I used to do a podcast kind of focused on the human side of players just outside of the game. And when these kids are coming into college, right, they're young adults. They're still developing, trying to figure out their way in the life. And the fact that you kind of take that, developing them in life and on the field, I think that's just a huge aspect of this.
Well, and I think as the adage goes, so to speak, I mean, kids know that you care about them.
Yeah.
They're going to do their best. And again, I've been very fortunate, to be around people even at a young age as a younger coach that really, embedded that in me, and I just felt as we went along the way that was always going to be, kind of the foundation, so to speak. And I've said often, hey, there might be guys and there are guys that know more than me and maybe better coaches, but I'm going to get kids to believe in what we're doing. And that obviously correlates not just in the coaching aspect of it, but from a recruiting standpoint. And as anybody will tell you, to move on in this business, you got to be able to recruit.
Yeah, I love it. Tyler, I'll turn over to you.
I was about to say, going on that recruiting process, ACC is a gauntlet at this point with the way that NIL is and everything like that. You mentioned treating it as like a Friday night. Kind of just give us more of an insight on like how much of a challenge it can be sometimes with that kind of stuff.
Great question. I think first of all, it starts with you got to embrace the challenge. I mean, and it's SEC in every sport, but you have to embrace the challenge. Listen, they're great coaches, they're great schools, they're great programs, everybody's good. And you've got to say, okay, I've always tried to find, from a recruiting standpoint, for me, it's always been about, okay, what can we do different? I want to make sure recruiting wise that I am doing, or we are doing collectively, everything at least equal to our peers. We got to do everything equal. So, okay, how can we get above that threshold? And I think there's different ways of doing that. Maybe there's things within your program that others can view as maybe it is a little bit better. But even if there's not, I think there's ways individually as a recruiter and then amongst your staff that you can do to separate yourself. And I think a lot of that is, in the work ethic, is in the personal attention, is in the attention to detail. But within this league in particular, in the SEC, everybody's got something positive to offer. But I do think, again, it goes back to relationships. I think it goes back to work ethic. I think it goes back to the follow-up. I think it goes back to presenting what your program is and what you think you can do for the player. I think it's twofold. I think it's one, as a program, you're telling kids, what can our program do for you? But then it's also making sure kids understand, what can you do for us? It's two-way street, and I think, that's kind of the balance of this whole entire process. But I do think, again, to reiterate it, I think it goes back to, first of all, you have to love recruiting. I know coaches talk about it. You have to do it every day and all the different, adages, so to speak, that come with that. And that is true. You have to do it every day. But you're going to do it every day if you love it and you embrace the competitive side of it, and I think I've been very fortunate to be at a bunch of really good baseball programs and around people that do understand it and understand, listen, you have to embrace that competitive challenge every single year. And, and obviously being, this is my third opportunity that I've had, in the SEC, being here at South Carolina, I was at Alabama and LSU twice. So I think I've got a pretty good pulse, regarding, what that means. But I think when you embrace the competitive nature of it, you're going to have a chance to be successful.
No, I love how you say that, and it'll tie into like normal life too. Like I'll use myself as an example, like embracing having the role that I have now, working with Jared and being able to talk to coaches like you and everyone else in the country, is just something I enjoy. And personally, for me, like I look at some of the other stuff I do, like I work grocery store for a living, so I got to deal with Thanksgiving people next week. Yay. But like looking back at it, it's like, do I enjoy that more and kind of embrace it? But do I embrace like putting myself out there and trying to be, somebody in the industry of baseball? So that's a perfect way of kind of looking at it from my vantage point and kind of relating it to what you say, of trying to be competitive and embracing that.
And I think that's a great point. And I think this, and as we've all learned our way in our profession, I think you see it's like everybody has to do what they want, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And view what they deem a priority, so to speak. And what I mean by that is, look, in the SEC, it's a 24/7 deal. There is not, and I'm no different, but I mean, all the recruiters and all the coaches in this, and it's all throughout the country. So I don't want to say just to the league, but obviously the competitive nature in this league and what's at stake and the ramifications and those things that go with it. I mean, it is 24/7. You have to think like that. If you don't, it's over. You know what I mean? And that's the truth. I mean, and you're going to, wake up at 4:00 in the morning. You can check Twitter because I think I missed somebody committing. You know what I mean? Or I missed a phone call. And it's like, sometimes your phone is right by your bed table where it's there just, so you're available to your players. But I'm also like, all right, what if I get a text or something from a kid on the West Coast? I don't want to miss it. But I love that. You know what I mean? And I embrace it. And I've just been fortunate that I found something that personally I love and have been passionate about for a long time.
Yeah, and you mentioned being here for a long time. You mentioned Old Dominion earlier, Justin Verlander.
Yeah.
Is there any good stories on that front?
It's a great story. I'll condense it. I'm going to condense it because I've told it a lot. They've actually did a couple of stories and articles on it. But first of all, I'll tell you this, okay? I had no idea he was going to be as good as he's become, okay? So let's just get that straight, and that goes for all the guys, But long story short, I'll condense this. When Justin was in high school, back then you didn't recruit kids early. Like legitimately, as you guys probably remember, the recruiting process legitimately didn't start until after your junior year. Kids you couldn't talk to them. You didn't take visits. You didn't do any of that stuff. You could see them play, but you couldn't go really recruit them. Or nobody, I shouldn't say you couldn't. Nobody did. So long story short, Justin's junior year, I was at Old Dominion. The very first time I see this guy, it's on a Sunday, right, in the fall. He's the last game. All the kids, the coaches throw the younger kids late, I'm the only coach at the field. I stay and watch. I'm like, wow, good looking kid, 6'3", 86, 88, good body. Circle a name, send him a letter. That was it kind of thing. A couple weeks later, I see him again at the University of Richmond pitch. Same deal. They always threw the seniors early, right? And he threw late. I see him again. I'm like, wow, this guy's pretty good. And I'll be honest with you, even back then, it's kind of formulate your opinion, like be the first, be the last, hang out. And that really set the foundation for me. And most of the other coaches left. I'm like, hey, I love this. I'm staying. Where am I going? Back to my apartment and do nothing. So I embraced it. Anyways, the spring comes around. All the games in that area that we recruit, it was raining. You're talking about Virginia Beach, South Jersey, Northern Virginia. Everything was done. And so I remember I'm like, Verlander. I knew he was our top junior, and I liked him. Anyways, I took a shot. Hey, are you guys playing? The coach tells me, yes, we are. He's like, Terry, he's only a junior, right? I'm like, yeah, I know. You know what I mean? So I go to see him play. He's really good. I go to see him pitch that night. This is the middle of his junior year. He's really good. He calls me. We start to develop kind of this relationship. And anyways, long story short, we just kind of, the whole process begins. I knew that summer, the Commonwealth Games, for all the Virginia people out there, that was like one of the biggest recruiting events of the year. The best players in Virginia, all went to it. And July 1st was the first day you can call him. He could call you, but he couldn't call him. And I said, man, if we got any shot at this kid, we better get this thing done early. And I said, hey, man, July 1, are you ready to roll? And he was in. You know what I mean? So he had committed to us. That summer, right before the Commonwealth Games, and he was committed, and, the rest is kind of history. And anyways, as it went on, Justin will tell you his senior year, he actually, had strep throat and a couple of different things regarding with his health. It was, nothing major, but the velo was down a little bit. scouts kind of came and went. Next thing you know, he ends up at Old Dominion, and here we go. So that's a much condensed version of it. But I will say this, and again, no idea Justin was going to be what he is. We all as recruiters have those stories. But I will say this, it was even then. I think it's a good kind of lesson, so to speak, that you try to find, persistence. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Staying with it, trusting your gut, finding something different, and building those relationships. And even as Justin continued to progress, he could have gone anywhere as he continued to get better. But just incredible family, incredible guy, and that's how the story kind of became.
That's amazing. And I, personally, I've never heard any of the Verlander stories either.
Yeah,
so that's a great thing for me.
Yeah, it was crazy. People couldn't, even as we went along, I mean, people are like, hey, how'd you get that guy done? How is he committed? I'm like, listen, first of all, I didn't know he was going to be that good, but I did know we wanted big, tall, projectable arms. You know what I mean? And I knew that was going to be the foundation of kind of what we did. And we had just come off a great year at Old Dominion and went to the regional. We were a 2 seed at Clemson. We had some really good buzz. And so it was an exciting time for sure.
I love that. And then, moving on to this year, joining a pretty solid South Carolina staff, in my opinion. You get Eli Jerzembeck back from injury. Roman Kimball's back. Tyler Pitzer put together a really good year last year. Is there any other guy that's really stood out to you this fall on the pitching side that has really like taken your eyes and kind of just drawn you in with the kind of stuff or the attitude that they have?
Well, obviously you mentioned those guys for sure. And, the one thing about our staff that is and kind of our team, I guess, so to speak, in general, the transition's been awesome. These guys have been great. And so we've been very, very fortunate from that end. And there's a great foundation, but we have some experience. We're a little bit, I think if you just maybe look at us on paper, it's an experienced club in a lot of ways. We do have some of our kids, I think, that we would think will make an impact, some portal guys and junior college kids. They're still older, So I think we've got some really good experience. But you alluded to him, and a guy Dylan Eskew's back, who's a senior that started a lot of games in the SEC, a lot of great experience. Matthew Becker, another guy, a lot of experience. Roman Kimball. So we've got some guys. Jerzembeck is back. Jake McCoy is a sophomore for us. It's got a really good arm, left-handed. That's has really made some great strides, throughout the fall. So I just think collectively, it's been a really, really good fall. And I tell these guys, particularly the older guys and the older pitchers on our staff, when I met with them, I says, look, especially the guys who I think had a chance perhaps to sign, maybe to some degree, whether it was, and they just made the decision that they wanted to come back and improve their performance and improve their stuff and try to, increase their draft status, money, the whole deal. I told him, this is what I care about most is that we create the best version of you. However we have to get there, and individually you'll get yours, so to speak, meaning like you'll have your opportunity, and then the program will get theirs, so to speak, because the better you do, the better we'll all do. And the one thing I wanted to make sure amongst the experienced guys is let them know you've all had experience. You've all had success. We don't have to go from here to here. We just need to go right there. It's just a little bit. So how do we get you right there? And I wanted them to understand maybe it's a 1 to 2 mile an hour click in the velo. Maybe it's a little bit different pitch. Maybe it's just moving you over on the rubber and we decrease some hits with the ankle. Those kinds of things. So I do feel really good about this pitching staff. We're done. It's been a great fall for us. And just as a coach, appreciative of these guys embracing, what we're doing. And I think they know that it's about them. It has nothing to do with us. It's about them. Even when you look at it, you have the winningest coach in college baseball right now and Coach Mainieri coaching them. And he came back, came out of retirement because he wanted to impact the lives of these guys. He wanted to help them get better and obviously win another championship here in South Carolina.
You nailed it around the head, buddy. That was amazing. I do want to ask, though, with Coach Mainieri, having him back for a third time around between you two, the relationship that you two have going back, 20 years at this point. Mm-hmm. You've mentioned how much of an impact he's had on your life, but just your impact on him and how he's doing now, considering that he's now back in college baseball. What does that mean to you personally?
Means a lot. We've never, certainly when I first joined him, I didn't know him. You know, I certainly knew of him when he was at Notre Dame, but we didn't know of each other. And you know, I had replaced actually the Brian O'Connor. Brian O'Connor took the job at UVA. I took Brian's spot, Oak's spot at Notre Dame. Oak and I kind of knew of each other and were friends, and that's how the whole connection started. But I mean, geez, in this industry, to have that relationship that we have is something very special, and I truly mean that. The one thing, even even beyond just the coaching, you know, I went back to LSU last year, you know, with Jay, but Coach Mainieri was still living in Baton Rouge. So that you know, once he retired from coaching, he was still there. So our relationship, you know, continued, and it was pretty special. But certainly the relationship we have is great, you know, and I'm always still, you know, continuing to learn from him. So much of my foundation, you know, that I have as a coach is everything that he's taught me. And he teaches you so many things, you know, and there's a reason you're not the winningest coach in Division I baseball for if you don't do things the right way. And I think the one thing, if I had to pinpoint maybe one or two things that he's taught me throughout the years, it's how you treat people, you know, and it's all about the kids. Every decision he ever makes is about the players. It has nothing to do with him and our staff. He just wants to treat the kids fairly. He's going to treat them great and put them in the best situation that they can to be successful. You know, that's number one. And then two, just from a more professional standpoint, you know, just how you run a program, you know, and there's a difference between running a team and running a program. Yeah, college baseball is more year to year now. Like, that's the truth. You've been following it with the roster, with the NIL, with the transfer portal, all of those things. But I will tell you this, and this is really important. You know, when he called me about the job, first of all, I couldn't believe it, you know, when he's telling me that. And, you know, and he probably would have been the only person, you know, I would have left for, to be quite honest. You know, we had just gotten back to Baton Rouge. Jay Johnson was incredible to me. And our relationship was very special too. But, you know, obviously Coach Mainieri, the phone call there and South Carolina, those two variables is why we left. But the point being is that we discussed this, you know, when he decided to come back and accept this job, we had to talk about a few things. Even in the couple years that he was out, things had changed a little bit in regards to the recruiting. But my point is this, what he decided and we decided collectively, nothing changes in the manner in which you run the program, in the manner in which you treat kids. Nothing changes. You can make this in college athletics right now, in major college athletics, you can make it transactional if you want. It can appear that way, right? It can be very transactional. Hey, what can you do for us? And it's a 1-year deal. We're not doing that. Like, we're not doing that. We're not gonna do that. It's gonna be about the players. It's gonna be about the individualism, whether it's in recruiting or coaching. And that's something that, you know, he's done his whole career, and I'm very fortunate that we're continuing to do it that way.
Absolutely love it, Jared. I may have stolen some of your questions there.
No, that's good. No, those are great. I wanted to kind of build off of Tyler's question, just on the pitching development side. As you kind of alluded to, on the recruiting side, there's been a lot of development, but there's also been a lot of development and kind of on the pitching side as well. Everybody's focused on high spin rates, on high velo. How is you as a coach taken a lot of those changes and added them into your coaching philosophy and how you develop players as well?
You got to do it. You know, you have to do it. You have to embrace it. And we do embrace it. You know, we've got, you know, like so many people have, you know, the player development side of things here. And we have what I feel is the best player development director in the country. And Chris Gordon, you know, he was at Duke. He was at Texas. He's with us here in South Carolina. It's an entire group effort to get your pitching staff and your pitchers to be the best version of themselves. It's a group effort. Here's how I break it down, quite simply, 3 areas. You got the body, you got the ball, and then you got how to win. Okay? Or the art of pitching, so to speak. And you have to be knowledgeable in all 3 areas. You have to understand all 3 areas. You have to teach all 3 areas. But the key to this thing is understand within those 3 areas which guys need the most, so to speak, in one of those 3. You know, so like in very basic terms, you talk about the body, you have to, and that's the mechanics, how the body moves, you know, all of those different variables. The ball is what the ball does, you know what I mean? The pitch profiles, the sequencing, maximum spin, you know, all of those things, they go together because your pitches should be dictated upon your arm slot, your release, your extension, all of those things. So you have to understand how the body moves. You have to understand what the ball does. And then I call it how to win, the art of pitching, or all the other variables, advantage counts, controlling the running game, understanding how to legitimately split pitch to pitch, bigger the moment, bigger the breath, all of those things. So it's all encompassing. And so I think where, as a coach, you have to evolve throughout the years, and in understanding all of those things. So I think what has changed a little bit is making sure that I call it the buckets. You got to understand all three buckets. You have to know when to go in each bucket for each kid and when to do it as a staff, so to speak. And so I tell our guys right away, this is what we're doing: the body, the ball, the how to win, understanding each day what bucket is where your focus is. And that's how you kind of split it.
I love that too, because you think about attention spans, right? If they're trying to have them focus on all three at the same time, splitting it up and having it individualized probably works a lot better with younger kids too.
I think it does. And I think too, it's even in the times of the year, where are you? You know what I mean? Are you in the body? Are you in the ball? Are you in the how to win? So obviously, hey, like when kids get here in the fall, it's a little bit more about the body and the ball. You know what I mean? Let's make our assessments, you know what I mean, where they are physically. Let's make sure they understand and are developing routines, so to speak. How does their body move within their delivery? Let's get the routines going with the lifting, the conditioning, the arm care, the throwing, put all that together. And as we get going closer and closer to the season, we got to get more of the third bucket and the art of pitching and the how to win. Okay, we got to make sure we're quick enough to the plate. Can we split pitches? Can we take breaths? Those kinds of things.
I love it. Last question I have before I go into a couple more fun ones just to wrap things up. As you settle into this role, as you all have gotten through fall, what are some of you touched on this a little bit earlier on, but what are some of the expectations for South Carolina in this upcoming season?
Well, I mean, the expectations are this. I mean, the bottom line is, like everybody, certainly in the country, but particularly SEC, we're trying to put ourselves in position to win a championship. Certainly, it's one day at a time. It's one step at a time. And, this is the best league in the country for a reason. But the expectations here to get this program back to Omaha, there's no doubt about it. As you all know, Coach Tanner won back-to-back national championships not too long ago. We have one of the best facilities in college baseball. I'm sitting right over my shoulder here at Founders Park. It's in one of the best fan bases in the country. The resources, we have everything here that we need to put ourselves in position, once again, to put ourselves in position to be a national championship contender. So that, that's ultimately the goal. And there's obviously a lot of things that go into that, but the expectation should be that, all of the time. And this program, as you guys know, is a program tradition rich for a long time. There's been a lot of incredible coaches here. The facilities are here. I kind of call it's our mantra, since we've gotten here, is develop and win. I tell recruits that. It's everything that we do from a baseball and recruiting standpoint. Like, that's it, develop and win. And I think it's important, even in the recruiting part of it, I tell, listen, from a pure baseball standpoint, just baseball. Okay, I know this is the whole holistic approach, but from a baseball standpoint, individually, you should go to some place that you want to put yourself in position to play or pitch in the major leagues, period, from a development standpoint. You know what I mean? And number two, you want to go someplace that you legitimately have a chance to get to Omaha and win a national championship. Those are the goals and aspirations, both individually and collectively. So when you talk about developing and winning, we feel like we've got all of those things here at South Carolina for the best players in the country. And so those expectations then coincide with that we want to put ourselves in position, just like everybody, to get to Omaha. But the transition has been great. The players are embracing that, and we'll take it one day at a time.
Awesome. Yeah, love to hear that. So now we love to wrap up with a couple more fun related questions. The first one I'm asking everyone is, if you could coach any team, past or present, which would it be and why?
Any team that I've had in the past?
It can be anything you had, team you've had or not had.
Holy cow. Well, listen, let me just say this. I will tell you just the first team that comes to mind. How about that I coached?
Yeah.
That was really, there's a lot of them, so I don't want to single them out, but one thing that really, comes to mind as a very kind of special year, so to speak, was 2008 for me at LSU. That was our second year there. Our very first year is myself, Coach Mainieri, Cliff Godwin, is now the head coach of East Carolina, one of my good friends and one of the best coaches in the country, what he's done there at ECU. We left Notre Dame, went to LSU. Our first year at LSU, we didn't make the SEC tournament. I want you to think about that now. Holy cow. They didn't make the SEC tournament there. It was unbelievable. Now, the next year, though, in 2008, the reason I tell you that was a really kind of just a special year is, it was a quick turnaround. We'd go from not making the SEC tournament to the next year going to Omaha. The next year that team won a national championship. And I just remember it was such a very, very special group, you know what I mean, of guys, of people. And it was such a quick turnaround. The buy-in, the kids, the families, the program, the history. It was really great. And it was one of those teams that you just felt like you were there with these guys forever. It was a special bond. And that was a special team with a special group of guys that I'll remember for a very long time.
Yeah, I gotta love that. I mean, I worked at Arizona State baseball, doing a student manager position in 2009 when they won like nearly 50 plus games or something.
Yeah,
it was just a different team chemistry. It was different. And I went to the University of Nevada, Reno after that and did baseball ops. But just like I haven't been in a clubhouse or like in a locker room, and the coaching staff and the players, everybody was on the same page. Everybody was working in the same direction. And I have to imagine that sticks with you because it's just something different that you don't get every single team with every single team.
There's no doubt. And that is the truth. And I will tell you, it's not about me, but what I mean by that is that everywhere I've been, I can honestly tell you, there's never been a bad experience. I just have been so lucky. I mean, just to be with the players. Obviously, listen, in any job in any year brings new challenges for all of us. We know that. It's not, you got to think positively, but you also got to be realistic. There's things that come, there's challenges, that happen for all of us, right? So there's always challenges every year. But I tell you, the coaches that I've had, the head coaches I've worked for, the coaches together that we've all worked together with side by side, where I've had the chance to live, it's all been great, and I've been really very fortunate. And to be here at South Carolina in Columbia is just, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. It's very fortunate. And then to be with these guys, the staff that we have, and to be back with Coach Mainieri, Monty Lee, John Henry, all of these guys, it's been great.
I love it. Next question I asked, and I asked this to like every guest that we've interviewed so far, because again, I like to focus on the human side of the thing. So what are some of the things that you like to do outside of baseball? I know you said that job's basically 24/7, but what are some of the things that like help you get away and separate from baseball a little bit?
Well, I'll tell you this, I'm not really a fun guy. I can tell you that. Like, I'm not like, my wife has a way better personality than me, probably is way cooler than me. You know what I mean? So I just, I do. I just love college baseball. I love recruiting. The two things I'll tell you, there's two things non-college baseball that I really love, okay, and that I kind of follow. Probably the number one thing I follow is college football. I love college football. You know what I mean? I didn't play very long. I played a little bit in high school, but I love college football, and all the places I've been at some great baseball schools, and some of those schools have been really good football schools too. You know what I mean? When you kind of look at it. So I've seen a lot of that, the atmospheres and so to speak. But I do love college football. It's probably like, I don't really watch TV, but like game day, you know what I mean? If we don't have recruits, I'm watching it or I'm taping it. So I love college football. In my spare time, we have it. I love going to the beach. Like if there's one thing I could do, I'm definitely a beach guy, over a mountains guy. And then most importantly, I have a 10-year-old daughter who's takes after her mom, way better athlete than her dad. And she plays all the sports. As a matter of fact, we just moved here. We just moved into our house about 3 weeks ago. And the next order of business is to get the basketball hoop in the ground in our driveway ASAP for her. So I told her that's happening. So those three things really, obviously my daughter and, individually, I follow college football and go to the beach when I can. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say you get a lot of really good college football in the SEC, especially at the schools you've been at.
There's no doubt. People ask me that a lot. Well, like, what's the differences? A South Carolina, LSU, Alabama, Notre Dame. I say those are pretty good football schools too, but they've all got their own, kind of individual things that are great. Whether it's the pageantry or the partying or the a little bit of a combination of everything. The one thing you think about all of it in South Carolina, my goodness, I think it has the best of the best. It's just, it wraps everything all together. You know what I mean? The tradition, the ceremony, just all of that stuff together. We've got everything here in Columbia.
I love it. Last question I'll ask is, what is a memorable or funny story from your time as a coach that you'd like to share?
Oh my gosh, man. I don't know if there's like one, kind of one individual moment. But I will tell you, I always, one thing I think about a lot is, obviously I kind of feel like maybe like I'm a high energy guy, so to speak, but I really have not been thrown out of many games. All right. I can tell you that's far, maybe like popular. due to unpopular belief, I really have not. You know what I mean? So, and one or two times that I have, it's always been kind of, I think, hoping to have the back of our players, so to speak.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there aren't. I don't know if there's too many. I can't remember two individual stories. Just to know that I've been very fortunate to be a lot of great places with a lot of great people, for sure.
Well, I love it. Coach, we can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day to join us. We know you got a busy schedule in the fall and then upcoming into the next year. So we'll definitely be watching, rooting for South Carolina. And if anybody's watching, lives in South Carolina, you got to get out to the field, watch them play. Again, Coach, we can't thank you enough.
Guys, I appreciate you having me on. Thanks a lot. We'll look forward to seeing you soon.